So we've got quite a long list. And would those people who we are going to mention, would they mind just, maybe letting us know where they are so we can see them? Yeah? Okay. So I'm going to hand over to Chris, and I think we should start.
Okay.
Is it a good idea to start?
I think so. Okay. Everybody's settled in. Good evening, Excellencies, Honourable Ministers, distinguished guests, members of the Diplomatic Corps, business leaders, partners, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the African Leadership Magazine, Africa Summit, and the 16th Annual African Business Leadership Awards. It's a pleasure to welcome you all to London as we gather under this year's theme, From Vision to Velocity, driving Africa's next wave of growth and leadership. My name is Chris Bishop. I'm a journalist. On Monday, it'll be 45 years since I've started writing, and half of those years I spent on the wonderful continent of Africa. So, welcome to you all. And I was also the founding editor of Forbes Africa magazine and the former editor of CNBC Africa. So, greetings to you all. We have some extra introductions to make here, starting off with His Excellency Jakaya Kikwete, the former president of Zambia and chair of the Global Advisory Board. Tanzania. Sorry. Let me start again, shall I? His Excellency Jakaya Kikwete, the former president of Tanzania and chair of Global Advisory Board of the African Leadership Organization. Welcome to you, sir. And also, Her Excellency Salma Kikwete, the former First Lady of Tanzania. We also welcome Baroness Sandhi Verma, the member of the UK House of Lords. And also Baroness Lindsay Northover, also a member of the House of Lords. And we have His Excellency Maimala Buni, the Governor of Yeve State in Nigeria. And His Excellency Mohammed Inua Yahaya, the Governor of Gombe State in Nigeria. Then His Excellency Hope Uzodinma, Governor of Imo State, Nigeria, ably represented by Honourable Declan Emilumba, the Commissioner for Information of Imo State. And we have Alhaji Ibrahim Kabiru Masari, the Special Advisor to the President on Political Affairs and Other Matters, the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Welcome to you. The Honourable Sheku Bangura, the Minister of Finance of the Republic of Sierra Leone. And his good lady wife, Daphne Bangura. And then we have the Honourable Mutaka Rabe Drama, Minister of Housing and Rural Development of Nigeria. Then we have Mr. Henry Fala Samoi, Governor of the Central Bank of Liberia. The Honourable Dr. Rosalind Myers, member of the South Carolina House of Representatives. Then we have Her Excellency Ms. Mackenzie Mazoka, the High Commissioner of Zambia. Welcome to you. And Lawrence Robertson, the Chief Executive Officer.
and with our partners about what challenges we face on the fiscal front. Sierra Leone indeed does face, like many other countries, a burden of debt. Well, most of which I believe exacerbated by a combination of factors, be they pandemics that emerge and we have to fund them, take loan to fund, or global crisis for food and energy, shocks that triggered by Ukraine, and tightening of financial conditions. We have not hidden these realities from our people, and we have engaged transparently with partners, international, be it bilateral or multilateral, to structure our obligations in manners that preserve our ability to invest in our people. Transparency is not weakness. It is the foundation of credibility. And credibility is the currency of economic leadership. Now, we're also investing aggressively in domestic revenue mobilization because we believe macro stability is the foundation for transformation, for attracting investment and the like. Why? Because aid cannot and should not be the engine of Africa development. It must be the bridge that we build. It must be a bridge while we build our engine of development. Our taxes, yes, need to grow. We've been, on an annual basis, been increasing tax efforts by 1.5 percentage points of GDP since the last 3 years to 4 years. And they are rising. Why? Because our property taxes, our customs revenue, our digital taxes on financial sectors, and all these areas where we are working to capture domestic revenue that rightfully belong to the development agenda are things we are innovating around. We are turning our eyes to the blue economy. Our extraordinary Atlantic coast fishes are potential for marine tourism as a frontier for economic transformation that is entirely within our sovereign endowment. There is more to do with greening and the resources that are associated with green funds. Climate resources and innovation around it are areas of our focus to innovate. And with the support of the President, we have been able to implement, like I said, sound economic policies that have yielded impressive performance on macroeconomic fundamentals. We embarked on fixed conciliation reforms and intensified domestic revenue mobilization and rationalized public expenditure. The results are impressive. Between 2023 October, inflation, for example, which peaks at 54.5%, we ended 2025 as 4.5% on the back of very solid structural reforms on the macro front. The currency has been stable for the last 3 years, and interest rates, which we are hovering around 41%, have been brought down through disciplined fiscal reforms and monetary sector reforms to mid-teens, which I believe are sustainable. We're introducing technology to optimize revenues, both from the point of view of telecoms, but also on excise, and ensuring that we introduce integrity in the mobilization of resources. Our primary surpluses, within 3 years, we've been able to generate close to 7 percentage points of GDP in primary surplus, which I believe is a solid buffer in times of shock. The moral is simple, that strong fundamentals and avoiding unforced policy errors are the best insurance against any systemic risks and stress. African continent, the next wave of growth should be inward-looking through optimization of the benefits from its mineral endowments, maximizing the potential of youths, and improving on the intra-regional trade. Sierra Leone is a vivid illustration of a tragedy that must change. We export iron ore, bauxite, rutile, yes, diamonds, raw, unprocessed, bearing the labor of our people, but yielding only a fraction of the value that could be extracted through processing, manufacturing of our own soil. The time to change this equation, I believe, is now. And that's the imperative that is being asked through this team. The time to build the refineries, the processing plants, the technology ecosystem that add values from raw resources to those resources that are needed to change the world must rest within Africa. Natural resource endowment offers, I believe, the greatest opportunity for achieving the highest level of growth and development, notably via re-engineering our understanding of what we have and structuring the business agreement around how to invest jointly with foreign partners who have the technology and know-how to be able to do it. And then we'll be able to ensure that through the mining value chain, from exploration to production and to value addition, Africa can transform very fast. Effective state participation is a must, I believe, and we allow African countries to optimize the benefits from natural resource extraction and lay the foundation for long-term economic growth and development that will benefit current and future generations. One of the key challenges as well that have been alluded to is the lack of inter-regional trade. The trade, take ECOWAS, a region, for example, with over 500 million population. However, inter-regional trade is very slow. It's very low in the sub-region. Although our region has made progress in moving people, it's not difficult to move between countries, but we don't move goods and services, which is the engine of transforming growth. And the African Continental Free Trade Area, I believe, creates a possibility of a core integrated intercontinental economy, a billion people, allowing African countries to trade more efficiently with one another without relying heavily on external markets. The AfCTFA is one of the most consequential expressions of self-definition, I believe, when pursued very vigorously. When fully implemented, it creates a market of 1.4 billion people with a combined GDP of over $3 trillion US. It means we are choosing to trade with each other, invest in each other, and build the value chains together rather than perpetuating exporting raw materials to be processed elsewhere and imported back at 10 times the price. That's not smart. Our young population, as has been said, is assets for Africa, the greatest. And the African youth population is growing rapidly and is expected to double by 2050, I believe, close to over 800 million young people. Now, we need to harness the knowledge, capacity, energy, and innovative skills. I believe people are investing more in younger people now with greater brain value to challenge us and be able to transform and be competitive in the modern world. Let's invest in them, then we are able to build the foundation for African transformation with speed. Let me close with a reflection born from personal experience. I have seen what happens when economic failure breeds conflict. The chaos, displacement, unspeakable suffering. And I have seen what happens when people choose, against all odds, to rebuild, but rebuild with speed. I have seen young Sierra Leonean engineers design solutions to infrastructure problems that no international consultant had solved. I have seen farmers in our provinces feed their families and their neighbors through droughts and floods with knowledge passed down through from generation. This is Africa, but not the Africa of despair, not the Africa of dependency, but the Africa of ingenuity and of resilience and of deep communal solidarity that turns strategy into testimony. We are being called today through this theme and this vision to move from vision to velocity in a moment that something greater than ourselves must happen. And we are being called to build the institutions, the economies, strengthen partnership, and build opportunities for that our children and their children will inherit. We are being called to demonstrate to a skeptical world that African nations can govern themselves with excellence, with transparency, with vision. But this time around, we are asking for accelerated delivery, not just vision, because the environment is shaped for us to take advantage. And I believe it's doable, and the leadership in the continent, economic leadership in the continent is not a future aspiration. It begins today, and in our budgets we pass, in the agreements we sign, in the investments we make, in the negotiations we do and undertake, and in the children we educate and the peace we choose to protect. So let us forge our development with the boldness, with the courage, and the speed that is requested. And let us lead our continent with the integrity of people who understand that the true measure of development is not growth of GDP, but the growth of human dignity. God bless Sierra Leone. God bless Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. So, now we turn to back for some insights from Nigeria and to the Executive Governor of Yobe State in Nigeria, His Excellency Mai Malabuni. Thank you very much. Join us on the stage.
The Chairman, Board of Directors, African Leadership Magazine, the management and staff of the magazine, fellow awardees, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I'm glad to be here at this auspicious occasion, to be so honored by this reputable media organization, the African Leadership Magazine. It is gratifying that the organization has not only followed events in our state, but appreciate our efforts and is today honoring our achievements with this award at an international stage. Thank you. As the governor of Yobe State, a state emerging out of security challenge, my administration, as a matter of deliberate policy and strategy, allowed our citizens to tell the story of our policies, programs, and projects, and the impact of these on their lives. Therefore, this event is not just a testimony, but it is a climax of recognition and appreciation of our efforts in moving our dear state forward. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I have been asked to speak briefly on leadership in an era of uncertainty, building resilience, inclusion, and shared prosperity in Africa, the Yobe State experience. As you may be aware, Yobe State is the second most affected state from the gory, protracted Boko Haram insurgency in northeast Nigeria. Many lives were lost, and properties including schools, hospitals, water, and power facilities were destroyed. Many communities were displaced and forced to relocate to other communities and lost their means of livelihood. Leadership at such a time has indeed been quite difficult. It is most unfortunate that such experience have bedeviled many countries in Africa, who are today plagued by one form of violent conflict or another. From the insurgency and banditry in Nigeria to the armed conflicts in Sudan, extremist insurgency in Somalia, Mali, Niger, and social threats in Ethiopia, arising from ethnic differences and power struggle, the struggle and control of the mineral-rich economy in Democratic Republic of Congo, and the xenophobic threat in South Africa. It has been violence, loss of lives, and economic underdevelopment. Many studies have attributed poor leadership, corruption, greed, and injustice, among others, as responsible for the cause of these conflicts. This makes provision of leadership in an era of uncertainty quite a daunting and challenging task, and requires patriotism, focus, commitment, and strong teamwork to provide committed and focused leadership. This is necessary to build trust and a sense of justice, fairness, and equal opportunities to citizenry without resource to sentiments of religion, ethnicity, social status. The need to assure the people that it is an all-inclusive government and system that makes everyone a stakeholder in a peace-building process and to resist the temptation of joining conflicts, and to entrench resilience for a peaceful and prosperous future. Our experience in Yobe State started with a vigorous sensitization program for our citizens to appreciate the government's war against insurgency and other violence as a collective war that involves everyone and everybody has a role to play. As the security agencies adopt the kinetic approach, the civil administration engages in non-kinetic approach. This approach worked very positively. Results and locals started providing strategic and timely information on movements and hideouts of non-state actors fighting the government and the populace. Parents who are hitherto adamant in supporting the government started volunteering critical and useful information on criminal activities in their communities, and it became all-inclusive and everyone's business. As the process progressed, the government reconstructed and replaced facilities destroyed by the conflict, while security and other institutions were encouraged to resume duties in the communities. This process also encouraged displaced persons to willingly return home, building resilience and restarting their lives, building their destroyed homes and means of livelihood. As a matter of strategy, our administration declared a state of emergency on primary and basic education, reconstructing 301 schools destroyed by the insurgency, established over 20 new schools, recruited 7,230 teachers, and trained 12,714 others to improve their capacity. The government provided scholarships to over 50,000 students to study in tertiary institutions in Nigeria and other countries across the globe. This is to build confidence among the people against the ideology of the insurgency, which seeks to set the people against going to formal schools. I'm glad to say that our investments in education increased enrollment into schools and fast-tracked development of education in the state. Nigeria's Federal Ministry of Education has now declared Yobe State's approach to implementing the basic education policy as a role model to other subnationals. Similarly, we launched a reform policy on healthcare delivery, establishing one functional primary healthcare facility in 142 out of the 178 wards across the state, with work on progress in the remaining 36 wards. We equally upgraded 8 primary healthcare centers to general hospitals and 4 general hospitals to specialist hospitals, and established Nigeria's largest maternal and child care center. It is gratifying that these interventions have improved healthcare delivery in the state and emerged the best state in primary healthcare delivery in Nigeria, with a prize of $1.2 million in assessment by the body of Nigerian governors, the Nigerian Governors Forum. We also established a biomedical research and training center for medical research and training. This attracted international renowned scientists who have now joined us in a research on kidney disease along the shores of River Yeve. In recognition of our commitment to biomedical science, healthcare research, and the fight against kidney disease, the Society of Neuroscientists of Africa, SONA, awarded me with the honorary membership and inducted me into their Hall of Fame to become the first political leader to receive this recognition. Recently, the Nigeria Vanguard newspaper presented me with the Best Performing State in Healthcare Delivery Award and the Agriculture State Award from Nigeria Business Media Organization. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, As a measure to promote economic recovery, we launched 2 mega agriculture empowerment programs to boost commercial agriculture to ensure food security and economic growth. We also constructed an international cargo airport, built roads, constructed 9 international modern markets to improve local and international trade, especially in sesame seeds that is highly cultivated in the state and globally marketable. We established 4 sesame seed processing plants to process the commodity to meet international standards for exports. It is important to note that we achieve this through transparent, prudent, and judicious use of our resources. Proudly, too, we received the Best Award on Public Finance Management, Fiscal Transparency and Accountability with a prize of 5 billion naira from the State Fiscal Transparency, Accountability and Sustainability, a World Bank-assisted program. This award therefore serves as a springboard that spurs us to do more, to promote good governance and serve the people better to improve their lives. Let me use this opportunity to appreciate the federal government of Nigeria, under the leadership of President Bola Tinubu GCFR, for the increased federal allocation to states, which has greatly supported us in executing these and other laudable projects to improve the lives of our people. To my dependable allies, brother and good friend, the special advisor to the President on political and other matters, Honorable Kabiru Ibrahim Masari, and my colleague and brother, His Excellency Alhaji Inua Yahya, the Executive Governor of Gombe State, and also the Honorable Minister of Housing and the Executive Secretary, PTDF. I thank you for the support and encouragement. Finally, I wish to dedicate this award to the good people of Yobe State. Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. So we're staying in West Africa now, and it's my pleasure to invite to the stage the Special Advisor in the President of Political Affairs and Other Matters for the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Mr. Alhaji Ibrahim Kabiru Masari. Next item, okay. Sorry. Right. It's the round table. Okay. Just put it up there. Okay. Well, now we're going to our round table this afternoon, and or this evening, should I say? And it's a great pleasure to welcome to the stage an old friend of mine, Dr. Victor Oladikan, the former communications expert and advisor to the President of the African Development Bank, and currently the Chief Operating Officer for Grupa Zenith. Do come and with his esteemed panel, and you'll be discussing the African Banking, Finance and Economic Leadership Roundtable. Welcome, Victor.
Thank you very much, Chris and Lalita. I'm going to speak from here for just a few moments, and then I will head on to the assigned table. Your Excellency, President Jakaya Kikwete, Mrs. Salma Kikwete, Baroness Verma, Baroness Northover, Executive Governors from Nigeria, Honorable Ministers, distinguished guests, esteemed panelists, and leaders from across Africa and the global space, the ecosystems of finance, business, and economic leadership. Really is a pleasure to moderate this afternoon's session on African banking, finance, and economic leadership. Well, we're all aware that our world is hurtling at the proverbial speed of light, and that is why this evening's roundtable with the theme Strategic Convergence, Aligning Global Capital with Africa's Growth Imperative really is critical. And what we do know is this: the challenge for us in Africa has never really been about capital. The challenge before us is really about scale, speed, terms, and impact. But today, we're really privileged to have with us a distinguished group of panelists who embody innovative and very, very bold ideas. So join me in welcoming, and I think I'm going to borrow Chris's mic. Join me in welcoming right over here in just a few moments, the Honorable Henry F. Samoy, Executive Governor of the Central Bank of Liberia. Yeah, if you could. We're going to leave the center chair for the sole woman in the group. We also have with us Mr. Farihan Al-Hassan, the Managing Director and CEO of GCB Bank PLC Ghana. You're welcome. We also have with us Dr. Abdul Majid Insekela, the Group Managing Director of CRDB Bank Tanzania. And you'll be sitting right next to me. The seat of honor is in the middle for our final panelists. The last, but certainly not the least, Mrs. Kapumpe Chola, Chief Executive Officer of First National Bank Zambia Limited. And just one of my very, very few Zambian greetings as she comes to the middle, Mulishani. For those of you who are from Zambia, the response is Mwino. I believe that's the greeting. So once again, give our distinguished panelists a very warm round of applause. We do have quite a number of issues that we want to discuss, but we've only got about 50 minutes. So we're going to try and talk fast, and if you listen fast, I think we'll cover quite a bit of ground this evening. I'm going to start first and foremost with the Honorable Henry Samoy, the Executive Governor of the Central Bank of Liberia. Central Bank, first of all, because without fiscal policies, there's no world of finance and there's no world of business. So the question to you, sir, is what does this moment in time demand of all of our financial institutions, our regulators, and policy makers, if we're going to convert potential into sustained, inclusive prosperity and economic growth? Over to you. And the mic should be live. Can we have a few more microphones that are live, please? I think you're on. Yes.
Okay.
There you go.
So, thank you very much, moderator. And firstly, let me say, Your Excellency, President Kikwete, other members of the board of the African Leadership Organization, Dr. Ken Giami, Minister Bangura, distinguished colleagues in the room, ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, let me say that it's a distinguished pleasure for me to be here tonight. as one of the awardees, and also to participate in this panel to discuss the issues that confronts Africa currently. As central bankers, we know what our challenges are, but we also know what our roles are. Monetary policy, executing monetary policy that attracts investment into our country. So in the discharge of our respective roles, we have to be deliberate and intentional about what we want to do and what we want to achieve for our respective countries and for the continent. And so that will mean sound monetary policy decisions have to be put in place to be able to control inflation in our countries, to be able to stabilize the exchange rate in our various economies, and give investors the confidence that they need to be able to invest in our various economies. And so in doing that, we have to create an environment that is transparent, that is predictable, that investors know exactly where they are coming to, and they can predict what the regulatory challenges in those various economies are. And so they are able to make decisions, investment decisions, based on the predictability of the policies that we have in our various countries. I think that is very, very key in terms of attracting investment into our economies. And also just to highlight that for investors, just to caution that investors should not look at the continent from just a risk perspective. There are a lot of opportunities within the African continent. And so investors should see the continent also from a perspective of stability and of return and of predictability. That's what investors should be able to see, and that's how they should be looking at Africa, and not just looking at us from a risk perspective. Also, we also as Africans then have to be able to have data that is reliable, that is trusted, that investors can depend on to make their investment decisions. I think that's what we have to do as Africans in order to be able to attract investment to the African continent.
Thank you very much, Honorable Governor. I just want to quickly do a follow-up here. Global investors frequently cite exchange rate volatility on the continent. Also, they talk about significant risks. In your view, is that the real challenge? Is it macroeconomic management? Is it institutional credibility? Or persistent mispricing of the perceived risk in Africa? What's your take?
I think the challenge that investors face is perceived risk. That is the challenge. There is a perception that Africa is risky, that you cannot predict what leaders or policymakers will be able to do at the next moment. So it is a perception, and it's that perception that we have to be able to deal with as leaders within the financial sector, as leaders in leadership, in various levels of leadership. That's what we need to deal with. So it is our perception. It is not the real risk. What we have in Africa is abundant opportunities. That's what we have in Africa. And investors should be able to look at Africa from the perspective of returns to them, from the perspective that policies can be predictable and they are able to make decisions that can influence the African continent.
Thank you very much. You've actually set me up here to come to Faryan Al-Hassan with the next question. According to the African Development Bank, there is a $400 billion a year financing gap on the continent. That's annually. Yet, many banks, our own banks in Africa, carry significant liquidity buffers and are seemingly reluctant to lend to businesses that could potentially promote development. Now, the tendency many times is to think that the perceptions of risk come from global investors. But many of our regional and local banks themselves are hesitant and hedgy. So the question is, as somebody who is responsible for deploying capital at scale, what specific risks or constraints make African banks reluctant to convert liquidity into long-term investments for businesses?
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm really happy to be here. But before I even answer the question, is to take it from Central Bank Governor.
Let's deal with that question first, because of the limitations of time. Let's not go elsewhere. Let's deal with that question first, and then we'll come on to the other parts.
The reason why I wanted to deal with that is because they are quite related. So let me just relate them to the point. The risk about Africa is misplaced. Africa is not risky. And it's the same misconception that banks in Africa place on customers.
If you could speak directly into the microphone.
The perception about African being risky is misplaced. The evidence on the table demonstrates that Africa is not risky. People tend to price African transactions 10 times their peers. But the evidence abounds that African businesses actually pay their loans better than their counterparts in other places. So that risk itself is misplaced. And that same mindset is applied by banks in Africa to businesses. The challenge that most banks in Africa face is the kind of liquidity that they have. Banks are funded short term, but they're expected to actually deploy funds long term. Basic credit. You cannot use short term financing to support long term financing. What we need to do in Africa is to see how we get the commercial banks to work with DFIs to ensure that the capital and liquidity available is deployed in a manner that can bring back that capital. Because don't forget that as you fund businesses today, you need those returns to finance future businesses. So if you use short-term financing now to finance long-term projects in Africa, it becomes a big challenge for you. And my regulator who is sitting here will not even allow you to do that. When they come for their examinations, they would want to ensure that there's prudent credit management and how you deploy liquidity and capital. So the challenge is not a liquidity problem, it's the misconception that banks have about businesses. That is one. And so banks tend to rely a lot more on collateral. Unfortunately, that does not do the trick for you. So what we do in GCB today is to see how we use data in analyzing the creditworthiness of businesses and then deploy capital to them. Unfortunately, the capital that you deploy would be a short-term capital because you are funded short-term and you cannot use short-term financing to deploy in long-term businesses.
Thank you very much. But the same also applies to global investors and global capital. So the question is, what really is the solution here? What do you recommend?
So DFIs need to work very closely with the commercial banks. What the DFIs do is they give you a first loss protection. The commercial banks have knowledge of the local market. They bring that knowledge and blend it with what the DFIs bring on board. And then it can be a win-win situation for both the DFI, for the commercial bank, and for the customer. So I think banks need to work very, very closely with the DFIs to have what I call a blended finance in supporting these business. They are able to attract a much more longer-term liquidity, and they can work with the banks to deploy that in supporting the local economies.
Thank you very much. And I'm going to come to Kapumpe next. Coming from your perspective at the First National Bank of Zambia, do you think that commercial banks are too risk averse? And in addition to what your colleague from Ghana has said, where do you think the rubber meets the road, and what is it that we can do to effect long-term change? Your thoughts?
Thank you for the question. I hope I'm audible. Okay, thanks. I think maybe let me start from, I think he's partly answered the question because, Yes, we are funded short term. Maybe let me answer the question first. Risk averse, no. Risk aware, yes. Banks play a key role in maintaining financial stability of markets.
And if you could speak directly into the mic.
I said banks play a key role in maintaining financial stability of markets. We take deposits. We play an intermediation role. So we're taking deposits. Those deposits are monies earned by general populace, which we must protect. So that's an important element, and that's why we're risk aware and we're ensuring that those funds are protected. But the intermediary role is that we must then on-lend to grow. Banks are in the business of, we're profit making. We want to grow the businesses. So if we're risk averse, we will not grow the businesses. We want to lend, we want to grow our franchises. That is what we're out to do. But we do run indeed the risk that has been referred to of short-term deposits versus long-term capital investment, because that's what we're talking about is the key challenge. But the way we're working around this, particularly in Zambia, is yes, we work with DFIs, but what we have had in Zambia as well is the pension fund and some local asset managers really coming to the party. The central bank, the main pension fund in Zambia, for example, has, in the last 4 or 5 years, invested close to $1 billion in long-term capital projects. And then banks can come on the back of that to provide short-term working capital, or after the project has reached stability, the banks can refinance, release funds back to the pension funds. So what's important is that we do create, across Africa, that economic, financial ecosystem, and make that work for our markets in terms of how banks play a coordinated role with many other players, with the pension funds, with the DFIs, who have long-term capital to make sure that we take projects off the ground.
Thank you. Right now, global sustainable investment assets now stand at in excess of $30 trillion globally, yet Africa attracts only a fraction of that. Now, in spite of all the opportunities that we have in renewable energy, climate-smart agriculture, infrastructure, we're still challenged. So my question is, in your conversation with investors, global investors, what are they not seeing about Africa, and what can we do to change that narrative and that perception?
I think firstly I'll pick up on the point that the central bank governor spoke to, which is see the opportunities in Africa. I think that's what the global investor is missing. They don't see the opportunity. There's many opportunities for exactly what you mentioned: climate smart agriculture, renewable energy resources. Africa has a huge energy deficit. Wide, vast arrays of land, lots of sunshine in many places in Africa. So many opportunities. I can speak on behalf of the group that I work for, First Rand, and I think I've got some colleagues in South Africa in the house who know the amount of work that we've done on renewable energy projects across most of Southern Africa, in South Africa itself, in Namibia. We're doing a lot of work in Zambia. But also, I think it's important that as we see and approach Africa's growth, we see how we bring financial sustainable financing as the way we do business. This is something that at First National Bank we are driving.
Okay, thank you very much for that. So that brings me to Dr. Abdul-Majid Nsekela, the MD of CRDB Tanzania. I still want us to continue a little bit on this theme of Africa receiving disproportionately small shares of global investment capital. Now, you've helped lead CRBD's transformation into a regional financial powerhouse. Do you believe that the continent's biggest challenge is the availability of capital, or project readiness, or the way Africa is perceived by global investors, or a combination of all three?
Thank you very much, The Excellency, my former president, Jakaya Kikwete, and other leaders in the room. I'm so happy to speak in front of my president and my inspirational. But I want to reflect my response a bit different, and I have a reason for that. I think, look on the theme you have just mentioned about vision vis-a-vis velocity. There is quite a difference between the two. And I was looking to my colleagues. They have spoke about what the question speaks about. But the real question is not about capital flow. The biggest questions is we, Africans, need to ask ourselves first. Because we speak about opportunities. We heard about the minister speaking about. And he spoke very well about the youth, the potential of Africa. But this is timeline. Youth will obviously end. The biggest question is, what are we doing? It's not about opportunity. It's now about implementations. But the second is not about DFY, capital flow. How do we do velocity, activity ratio within the capacity within the continent? Does it mean that Africa does not have capital? There is capital indeed. Can we generate our own capital without looking future development? So the key questions which need to be adopted, and I look to governor, is sense of change, do the best great. We have to do the best great. What do I mean by saying that? When you speak about developing partners who flow capitals and the other foreign investors, they are coming up with instruments that enable commercial banks to lend. But the same instrument can also be created by ourselves. When you speak about guarantees, de-risking, definition of specific sectors, there must be intentional policy. I think the biggest challenge we're facing now is about policy projections. Most of our policies are not dynamic, they are not predictable, and there is factual facts and perceived facts. I think in Africa we are mentally affected by having more negativity information spreading globally as a news to the world. And then tend to limit even those investors. Some they're not aware of Africa, but they read more history of Africa, and they perceive that that's the nature of Africa. So that's the effect. I think what we need to do together, it doesn't matter where the capital comes from. We have to redefine our policy and make it predictable. Secondly, we have to have intentional. The opportunity I have spoke today, and many other forums we go, each country has differences. And we Africans, we have not been able to unite in terms of looking at the opportunity together. How do we collaborate? I will speak an example of Tanzania. Looking at Tanzania, for example, on the infrastructure perspective. Tanzania has been working closely with their neighbors, Burundi and DRC, building the SGR. You know what does it mean? 3 countries negotiating to one contractor. That means there is flexibility. Investment will be less costly, but also they have post-intentional. And the next question is, how do we leverage those opportunities across those countries? And how does regulators, central bank, support commercial bank to implement? I think the biggest challenge we face, and I look to my colleagues as banks, we operate on principle-based approach. But if you look on the principle-based approach, you will not be able to prosper even the country you operate. We have to work together with our regulators to look on the opportunity together as a partner and create environment which is enabling environment, which will sustain not only commercial bank, but also the country at large.
And I want to say I completely agree with you there. We're talking about partnership, convergence, alignment. So I'm going to come back to Honorable Samoei again, one more time. There are quite a number of analysts and critics who say that African central banks need to really evolve from just being purely inflation-fighting institutions and rather becoming engines of economic transformation themselves. From your perspective, from where you sit, what is it that central banks need to do together with domestic banks to move the agenda forward? And I ask this question keeping in mind that come November, there will be a meeting in Angola of ministers of finance as well as central bank governors, I think that would be an opportune time again to deliberate on this, to see how the alignment between central banks and domestic commercial banks can help make a difference. Your thoughts? Are we doing enough? And if not, what can we do better? I actually think it's working. It's working if you speak into it.
Hello? Okay. All right.
There you go.
So, you're right. I think as regulators, we need to begin to think outside the box. We're just too focused on regulations. And we now have to begin to think in terms of what we can do as regulators in terms of developing our capital markets. She spoke about the capital markets, and he spoke about resources on the continent. There is a need to work with DFIs, yes, but there are things that we can also do internally. Begin to look at some sort of policy reforms as regulators also that give some sort of flexibility to commercial banks to be able to intermediate in the local economy. And that's where we need to begin to think from. We are just too restrictive on our commercial banks as regulators. And when we examine them, we give them very limited room to operate. And so we have to improve the investment environment. We have to look at the collateral frameworks in our countries that exist in our various countries. We have to look at the laws that give the commercial banks some level of confidence that they can deploy funds and be able to recover those funds. We have a specific case in Liberia, and in fact, I'm planning a national conference in September to address some of the constraints that the commercial banks actually do face. Because I come from a commercial banking background. Many years I was a commercial banker, so I know exactly what the constraints are. Now sitting as the regulator, and I'm trying to come in to really help the commercial banking system. Going back, I'm going to launch an enhanced collateral registry framework that will now accommodate both movable and immovable assets. The borrowers need to know that there is a framework for secure lending, but also within the legal system, there has to be some level of confidence for the commercial banks that the legal system actually do protect them. That if they deploy funds, and for whatever reasons there is an incident of a default, for which that default situation cannot be cured by restructuring of the existing portfolio, that they can recover from the collateral that has been pledged to them. And so that is what we are focused on. And I think that as central banks, even as we look at our own regulations, we need to work with other leaders within the political spectrum also to be able to address these issues that constrain growth in the local economy. And so I will encourage any regulator now to begin to think outside the box, to look at frameworks that can work. We have to be able to work with central government, the Ministry of Finance, my brother, the minister, is here, to put together some sort of guarantee schemes that can help the commercial banks to push them. I'm having a discussion with my minister to say, can we start with a fund? Because if we want to grow our economies, we have to look at the SME sector in our various economies. That's what we need to look. We need to pay attention to them. There is a lot of potential. The minister spoke of the potential of what is happening in Sierra Leone. We see it in our various countries on the continent. There is a huge potential. There is the digital innovation that is coming up. The young people are very, very excited about the digital age. We need to put mechanisms in place that can support them.
Sure.
And it opened up the window of opportunity for even investors to invest within the digital space within our various economies. So it's about thinking outside the box, looking at the regulations and how we can tweak the regulations that the commercial banks can use to be able for them to avail funds. And just to the point that the MD from GCB mentioned in terms of the short-term nature of the funds. Again, we have to be deliberate and intentional about what we want to do. And I want to share that with the commercial banks here. When I ran a commercial bank, I had the same constraint. So what I did was to take some very, very deliberate measures to improve the outlook of my portfolio. And once I was able to do that, I was able to attract DFI funding into the bank. So when I started, it came in, the first time, it came in for 5 years. And then I was able to use it and then repaid, and I went back. And I got the same amount was rolled over, but this time with a longer tenor, because that is what our economies actually need to grow. Longer tenor funds. That's what we need to grow. So we have to create that enabling environment for our commercial banks also to be able to attract DFI funding into their banks.
Thank you very much, Governor. Thank you for elucidating some of the processes and the environment for collaboration between central banks and commercial banks. But I think there's another bigger elephant in the room, and that is the fact that cross-border trade and finance is not really where it should be. Africa still does more trade and business outside of the continent than within itself. So I'm going to come to Mr. Al-Hassan here, just based on your experience at GCB Ghana. And I'm coming to you specifically because Ghana, like Nigeria, increasingly is operating in an integrated West African market. Yet, trade finance is constrained by so many things: payment systems, compliance costs, corresponding bank pressures. So, in your opinion, which specific element of African trade finance, Africa's trade finance architecture is most in need of reform and transformation? Not just from Ghana's perspective, but just from the perspective of Africa trade finance. What needs to change, and change very, very quickly?
No, so I think you're right. One of the biggest constraints that businesses face in cross-border financing is around correspondent banking. That is one. There's also the perception that there's fluctuation in currency. But I think that the posture of PAPs and the drifting towards PAPs by GCB and other banks would address this in the long term. So in the GCB bank, what we've done is we've actually set up a desk whose job is to see how we play in these corridors, whether in the cross-border trading within Africa or in the Afro-Asia space. That opens up different opportunities for our businesses. It takes away the dependence on the dollar in particular and ensures that the funds stay within Africa. So we are beginning to use our investment banking to structure deals in a way that allows us to use PAPs as our rail in doing cross-border transactions in Africa. And I think as we promote the use of PAPs in other banks, these limitations could be a thing of the past. The beauty about that as well is that it allows the funds to stay within Africa for subsequent trade transactions.
Thank you very much for being straight to the point, very succinct, much appreciated. I'm going to come to Ms. Chola here. One of the biggest frustrations that investors and business owners tend to have in Africa is that many projects never make it to financial close. Now, looking at transactions that you've been involved in, and based on your experience, what separates projects that attract capital from those that permanently remain stuck in the pipeline, and what can African institutions do to help close that gap?
Thank you, Victor. That is also very true. But I think what we tend to see with transactions that do get off the ground is that it has to be, I mean, we use the word bankable, and it sounds ridiculous, but it really has to be bankable. It has to be ready. Who are the sponsors of this transaction? How much work have they done in assessing the viability of the project? how much returns it can generate, but also have they looked at the risks in totality? You cannot, I guess, do away with all risk, because that is what business is about, but how well are those risks mitigated? And this is the sort of some of the work that we tend to do at FNB, is really working with our clients as partners. We do like to use the term in our business of a trusted advisor, because you want to walk the journey with the client even before they've really come to financial close, to ensure that the project that they bring to the table is something that is actually quite doable. And so when you say what is the distinction, I think those are some of the features. It's the fact that you've looked at it, you looked at it in totality, there's a market for it, there's returns that can be generated that will grow a business, but also you've looked at the risks and you've seen and tried to mitigate the risk to a very large extent. And also, I guess for us from a banking perspective, I've already said that we work with our clients as a trusted advisor, but we also like to work with, I think I've heard the phrase used today of shared prosperity, and it is a phrase that is being touted a lot across. And I think sometimes it just sounds like a phrase that you talk about, but the way we're using shared prosperity within the First Rand Group is that we look at our clients, particularly the SMEs, the smaller clients, and walk the journey with them of actually building capacity within the business. We call it start, run, and grow. You actually really, from its infancy, work with those clients and spend some time. Sometimes we even actually, on some of the solar projects or renewable energy projects that we did for small scale when Zambia went through a drought, was that we actually pulled a fund and made that fund much cheaper than commercially viable. But really it was, one, to help these businesses to stay afloat. But secondly, when they do turn around, guess who they'll be banking with? It will be FNB. So that's some of the stuff that we've done in the past.
Excellent. Which again, and I'll come to you in just a moment. There seems to be a nexus also, and maybe I should ask Mr. Nsekela that this question, just as a follow-up to what Mrs. Chola just said. Many times, DFIs and commercial banks sit at the same table, looking at the same projects, yet coming to financial close, if at all, sometimes take years. Businesses do not have years to wait on a loan. So again, we're talking about convergence, we're talking about alignment. In your opinion, what can DFIs and commercial banks do to enhance and speed up, accelerate the synergies between both of these institutions in order to further Africa's development? Your perspective.
Thank you very much. I think the biggest challenge, what we need to do is just move away from transaction partnership to institutional partnership with the intention to build economy. DFI, they are always providing instruments that enable commercial bank to deal with different infrastructure projects or strategic projects. And banks are in the level of relationship management with a local content perspective, understanding. So what we need to be doing with the DFI is moving away on looking on the transaction at the table. Just have institutional discussions on what strategic direction you, as a partner, you are going, and where the opportunity lies, and what are the policy in that particular country are defining to. And the banks obviously use their local content perspective to navigate and guide on the implementations. So from banking perspective, when you look on the DFI, for me, what you need to change is collaborative partnership rather than transaction-based approach.
Thank you very much. Really, really important there. I'm glad that we have in the audience today ministers from several African countries and several executive governors from Nigeria and their representatives. I'm sure if you sat down with them one-on-one, they would also express to you some of their levels of frustration. I'm just going to start with Mr. Samoy on my extreme left, and we'll work our way this way. If you had the opportunity to advise African heads of state or governors to do one critical thing in the area of finance that could really move this train along speedily, that you think is a block in the pipeline, what would that one thing be? A bold, innovative idea and suggestion, starting with Mr. Samoy first.
Okay, so for me, for the experience that I've had from my jurisdiction, it will be a legal reform. Reform the legal sector, give confidence to the commercial banks, and you open up investment into your country. Because it is predictability that investors are looking for. They have to be assured that they can put in capital and they can get their capital out safely. And that goes similarly to the commercial banks.
Bold, innovative idea.
Governments must believe in the entrepreneur. They must believe in the entrepreneur. Let's make patient funds available for banks to support innovative ideas. The youth of today are impatient. They've got bold ideas, they've got incredible ideas. The banks, as my colleague said, are using customer deposits in funding. There are certain risks that banks are not willing to take. Government must be willing to make what I call patient capital available for the banks to support these creative ideas. The Apples, the big tech companies.
And when you say making patient capital available, how does that work out in reality?
So you can have a fund that banks can tap into over a long term to support these businesses. Okay. For example, banks will tell you they don't do what I call startup, but every business was a startup at a point in time. So governments must be willing to support banks to play in these seeming risky areas. That for me is key in advancing the economies of these
Fantastic.
countries. Thank you.
Excellent.
Same question?
Same question. This is the closing question here.
Right.
We've run out of time.
I think a platform. There's lots of transactions across Africa, but we're also replicating a lot of things. I've already heard here about establishment of collateral, etc., stuff that is happening already in other markets. But there's also lots of transactions that there's excess power in Tanzania. Zambia has a shortage, DRC has a shortage. Why don't we put that information on a platform? Platform sharing of information, platform sharing of projects, but also making sure it's a full ecosystem that Tanzania doesn't need to do that extra because Zambia has, et cetera, et cetera. And Africa being one big continent that really works together.
Excellent.
I think for me is to create a unified center of investment area where you encourage commercial viable project, either public or private, to be placed with identified non-changeable policy and make accessible globally to everyone.
Fantastic. On that note, we've had similar themes cutting across the power of innovation, the power of partnership, collaboration, the centrality of regional integration, great ideas, and great energy moving forward. May our conversation, which is part of a larger conversation, be a catalyst for Africa's continued future growth. Africa's potential is great, and Africa's greatest story is still waiting to be told. My name is Victor Ladokun, and it's been a wonderful pleasure being the moderator of this session. Chris Bishop and Lalita, over to you. Kindly give a round of applause to our panelists, please.
Well, thank you very much, Victor, and your esteemed panel. Now we move on to Sierra Leone, Economic and Investment Roundtable, where we'll be looking at what's driving fiscal reform and investment towards sustainable growth. Can I invite the moderator, please, Dr. Christian Linfield, the Managing Partner at Africa Ventures Advisory, to come on and summon his panel? Take it away. You might need this.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Chris, for the introduction. Excellencies, honorable delegates, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I know that we are conscious of time. It's nevertheless an honor for me to moderate that panel. And unfortunately, Honorable Minister of Finance Bangura already left the room. Nevertheless, I need to thank him for his excellent speech, but also for setting the scene around Sierra Leone, because that would have been my task actually and would have cost us 10 minutes, so we can save that. I hope you all listened carefully to him when he talked about how Sierra Leone continues to implement an ambitious program of fiscal and structural reforms. But he also left us with a challenge for that panel, that is, we can't just highlight the achievements, we need to go a bit deeper. And obviously, I would not be able to do it alone, so I'm quite thankful to invite my panelists, Mr. Matthew Dingy, Financial Secretary, Ministry of Finance, Sierra Leone, as well as Alim Bangura, Chief Economist, Ministry of Finance, Sierra Leone. Welcome to the panel. Come closer so that we don't have a gap here. Yeah, let's directly go into our round of discussion points. As we heard from the Minister of Finance, the achievements over the last couple of years have been great and are still going on. You've been both part of that journey and architects in the background, so to say. Mr. Bangura, it would be really interesting to hear from you what you've seen as the key challenges, but also the key learnings and key achievements during that time, to go a bit deeper into what you've done in this time. There's one behind you. I think that one worked.
Thank you very much. Let me ask that I sit or stand on existing protocols. So key challenges of the Sierra Leone economy based on the experience I've had so far. I'll just mention two. One is macroeconomic instability. Maybe that's a big word. I'll come down and try to break it down. Second is limited fiscal space. Maybe these are two big words. So what do I mean? Over time, because of shocks, external shocks, domestic shocks, and policies, slippages or mistakes, we had a situation where inflation was very high, the budget deficit was very wide, the exchange rate was very volatile, domestic interest rates were very high, so the cost of borrowing was very high, debt was very high. So all of these weak macroeconomic fundamentals actually disturbs the economy and disrupts investment. The second is limited fiscal space, and I'm sure most countries face this, right? When the amount of revenue relative to expenditures, the gap between the two is very wide. You do not have enough revenues to fund your expenditures, right? And in recent times, most countries face what we call high debt burdens. So you collect few revenues. I mean, the amount of revenue you collect is very small, but at the same time, you spend most of it in servicing debt, right? Or paying some what we call statutory expenditures. So the space that is left to maneuver, to spend on other sectors of the economy is quite limited. So let me just talk about those two. So in terms of reforms, well, we have undertaken, the minister spoke about them, several macroeconomic structural reforms, right, that has now enabled us to stabilize the economy. As he mentioned, the budget deficit was close to 10% in 2022. Today we are talking about 4.4% of GDP. Budget deficit. Inflation was 55% in 2023. In December, it's 4%, 4.4%, right? Domestic interest rates on government securities was 41%. Now we are talking about the mid-10s, right? So the exchange rate depreciated by close to 70% between 2021 and 2023. As we speak, the exchange rate appreciated in 2024 and depreciated by less than 0.5% in 2025. Right. So challenges, reforms, results.
Thanks for sharing. From a key learnings perspective, I mean, what can you recommend and suggest to other countries where to focus on to be on such a successful route?
Sectors?
No, successful route. I mean, what can you recommend? What were the measures?
Well, for most low-income countries, I would recommend what the minister spoke about, because when this situation, we're experiencing these difficulties, we adopted what the minister called fiscal consolidation, meaning that we focused on mobilizing domestic revenue, but also managing expenditures very well. And once you're able to do that, then you should be able to stabilize your economy, get fiscal space to spend on priority areas like infrastructure, agriculture, health, education sectors that will promote sustainable growth. So I advise countries to do that, just to do that, to consolidate the public finances.
Thank you. Mr. Dingy, when we talk about attracting investors, what have been the measures and the program parts that gave more confidence for investors into Sierra Leone?
Yes, Sierra Leone, we are doing quite a lot, especially in recent years, in trying to attract investors in country. We have a lot of fiscal incentives in our laws that provides the space for investors to ride on in terms of their investment, the returns they are targeting. There are lots of laws in place that guide the sector they want to invest in and see what incentives are available for them to ride on. But on top of that, like my colleague just mentioned, you want to ensure that the fiscal environment is stable. So one thing investors really look at, especially for Sierra Leone, is our tax laws, the laws we pass, because they know at the end of the day they have to pay most of those taxes. We try to have predictability in our tax laws. What we did, we developed a medium-term revenue strategy for a 3-year period, wherein we highlighted all of our revenue measures and tax policies we intend to implement over the medium term. We publish that in our website so that everybody can have access to it. And every year when we do the finance bill, we draw some proportion of those measures and promulgate them through the parliament, through a finance act. And so it is open, and we subject that to wide discussions, wherein we invite even the private sector to give us their own input perspective on those laws even before we take them to the parliament. So we provide a platform for them to participate so that they don't see the government as just imposing tax measures, tax laws, which they are not okay with or which could pose challenges for them in their returns when they invest, but for them to also be part of the process. They understand it, we discuss together, we agree even before we take it to the parliament. So of recent years, we have very, very low resistance from the private sector, from investors when it comes to our tax laws and the measures that we put in there every year. So that's also creating the confidence for investors to come into Sierra Leone and invest, because they see clear visibility over the medium term as to what our tax policies are going to be and how those tax policies are going to be administered through the tax law.
Do you have an example where it worked already quite well, either a sector example or an international investor or a partnership where you can highlight?
Well, for example, in the past, only the government invests in the power sector, in energy. Now in Sierra Leone, for the first time, we have a huge energy company, fully privately funded, mobilized in country, producing a generation plant that will produce about 105 megawatts of electricity to the western area in Freetown. That's a fully funded private sector initiatives from the FIs and other regional banks that have provided the funding. What we've ensured that the laws on our energy sector have been unbundled, creates a platform for the private sector to come in and participate either in generation or transmission or the commercial sector, so that you can freely come in and do your investments, and the laws are there to protect you, to make sure whatever tariffs that you want to administer are all guided by the regulatory bodies established by government to supervise that. So for the first time, we see a huge investment in the energy sector coming from the private sector, and what's driven by that is because of the transparency we have on the laws governing that sector. The same for agriculture. We see a lot of agro-processing industries now being established in Sierra Leone. Why? Because we've promulgated a lot of incentives in the agricultural sector that gives them time to recoup all their investments in agriculture. In fact, most of our agricultural inputs are tax exempt, just to provide that leeway or space or de-risk the environment for them, because we know agriculture is a very risky sector to tap into. So we create that platform and make it very open and transparent to them. The same goes for tourism, fisheries, and the rest. So right across the board, we want to ensure we have a platform that is very open, transparent, and fair to all investors in whatever sector you want to invest in Sierra Leone. There is fairness and transparency, and we are seeing the increase in investments that have been mobilized just over the past 3 years of over $1 billion or so.
Thank you for that. Absolutely worth an applause. But coming quickly back to the sectors, and Mr. Bangura, you already mentioned the sectors earlier. The depth of the value chains is very important to create local value and employment, etc. Are there any reforms planned to support the local production, local value chains? What is undergoing at the moment in Sierra Leone?
Yes, of course. In fact, that has been the focus recently, actually, to promote value addition in almost all the sectors we are doing. Like most African countries, we produce and export raw materials. So let's take the case of cocoa, for instance, right, or coffee in Sierra Leone. Now we are supporting agro-processing. So you start seeing, as the FS said, industries coming in to process cocoa and coffee into finished product. Recently, we had a session in Freetown from Governor Samuel was there, and we were at the hotel. At the end of the session, the hotel gave us some chocolates. I was surprised to see that those chocolates were manufactured in Sierra Leone for the first time. I didn't know, right? So that's value addition. The same thing goes, we're also preaching the same. It's not happening yet for the mineral sector, which the minister spoke about also. We produce iron ore and export it raw, and then we import steel rods, right? We produce bauxite and then import aluminium. We produce diamonds and then import expensive, chains and diamond-related products, right? So now we are trying to support industries in that area to engage in value addition in those sectors so that we can get the benefit of employment, but also growing the economy at large.
Thank you for that. Quickly coming to, again, Mr. Dingy, a question, attracting global capital. You experience a very competitive environment, especially within African countries on the continent. What is an advantage you can offer as Sierra Leone to attract global capital at the moment?
Thank you very much. I think that's a good one. We are aware of the competition out there, because especially us as low-income country competing with countries that have moved to even middle-income or even high-income countries, they are still fighting for the limited global capital that is out there, and we also have to push in to make sure we get the best out of it. So like I mentioned, what we are doing PR. Public relation is something very important, even as you strive to let people know what your plans are. So we are doing a lot of engagements globally, right, to just preach what we are offering in Sierra Leone. A lot of reforms have been done. For example, we now have a one-stop shop in Sierra Leone to register businesses through our National Investment Board. So it means in one institution, you can go in there from within 24 hours, you can get all your business documents recorded, registered, and you walk out with a certificate issued for incorporation of your business. We want to make the ease of doing business very, very low so that people can easily come in and set up businesses without having to go into a lot of hassle. So we are creating a lot of transparency, public relations on all our institutions that deal with the private sector. And as best as we can, we capacitate them, we give them the resources they need to make sure that they can attract investors and they can bring in the global capital that we are looking for. So we don't hesitate to go into the big sectors. For example, like my colleague mentioned, the mineral sector as one. We work in partnership with them. We sit with them, even as they want to plan to mobilize capital from overseas. Whatever concessions, guarantees, or things that they will need from the side of government to support their proposals or the bids they want to provide to the financiers, we also help them to sit and discuss around that and see how the government can be of help to help them to mobilize those resources and come in country. So we work in partnership with all investors and the Ministry of Finance. We're also diversifying the way we do business. We look at innovative ways of bringing in new financing, whether it's from our mineral resources, whether it's from climate resources, or from other forms of non-traditional resources. But as long as we see the potential there to harness it, we'll work with those partners. We sit on the table, discuss steps by step what needs to be done to support them to attract those resources, and to provide that support. Whether it has to go through the cabinet or to the parliament through ratification of any law, we can do that just to ensure we mobilize global capital as best as we can.
That sounds really brilliant to me. And as the previous panel has eaten so much time from our panel, and Victor, you owe us a drink later for that, we need to come to the final round of questions. If we meet again, and the question goes to both of you, next year here at the Africa Forum, what would be the one milestone, the one achievement you would like to report on? And your minister will record it now.
Well, the topic deals with reforms, right? The fiscal reforms we are doing to attract, or to support investments in Sierra Leone. Of course, reforms means it's a continuous process. It means you continue to innovate every now and then to see how we can do things better. Whilst we do our own bits on the side of government to do all these hard reforms and make sure they go through, pass the laws and everything, we also want to send a message to investors coming in to respect the laws of our country. Right. For me, that could be a very good milestone we'll achieve. When you come with the attitude of respecting our laws, abide with the laws, so that whatever agreement you're going to sit to discuss, let those agreements speak to the laws that have been passed by the land, and not what they just want, forcing us to deviate from what's in the law just to please their own ambition of making profits. Like their colleagues from Liberia, the governor mentioned, the opportunities are there. Let them focus on the opportunities and see how we can work and harness those opportunities together so that we can all report our successes together and not just on one side.
Super.
Thank you.
What would be your milestone?
One milestone. I'll go slightly different from the FS. For me, one milestone really, which I think we should achieve when we meet next, is actually our country should be able to raise their own revenue, right? In an environment where there is global uncertainty, decline in official development assistance, tighter financing conditions, you have no choice but to look inwards and raise your domestic revenue. Because at the end of the day, the effectiveness of a state is assessed by its ability to raise revenue and provide services for its people. Where are we? When the minister took over, revenue in Sierra Leone was 7.2% of GDP. And we all know the international threshold is a minimum of 15% of GDP. So we moved from 7.2% to 7.9 to 10.1. We are now 10.7. We are aiming at 15% of GDP in the next 2-3 years. If we can achieve that, we can sustainably finance our expenditures without borrowing, without relying on external partners. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and I can hand over to Chris, but quickly saying thank you to all participants from Sierra Leone. We learned a lot. It's very impressive, and obviously we need to invite you next year again to check on the milestones. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Christian. Thank you for the panel. Most interesting. So now we move to our special presentations and goodwill messages. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to call 3 people onto the stage to have a quick word and goodwill message, starting with Mr. Harry Anagnostaros Adams, Executive Chairman of Kefi Gold and Copper PLC. Are you in the house? Yes? Is he? You're representing him? Okay, I don't need one of these, by the way, so it's all right. I was thinking about you.
I mean, there is something special in the DNA of the country. If you combine that with trust and with agreeing the mission, I just think it would be incredibly powerful. There's no black magic. You know, it's just working and doing things and sticking to your word and just standing your ground, but doing it in a way where it builds trust. The country is on a mission, and we're part of that mission. We can serve that mission. It's even more special because, to be blunt, I now have Ethiopian grandchildren, and my daughter has married an Ethiopian. We have Ethiopian grandchildren, so you guys are stuck with me, but no matter whether you like it or not. The geologist's answer would be that I knew that 175 million years ago that Ethiopia and Australia were joined. Australia, when I was a new grad from university, was not a strong gold producing country, and today it's number 2 in the world. It's going to happen here. That's the geologist's answer. The government policy answer is actually Ethiopia welcomes it now. The Tulakapi district is a wonderful district. It's beautiful people, salt of the earth farmers. Although I can't speak Whanaromo, when I talk to the people in the community through an interpreter, we have a real conversation. They ask the real questions. What's in it for our community? What's in it for our children? And what are you going to leave behind when it finishes? They're the critical questions. Intelligent people, sincere people, devoted people had no doubt we could do it there and that we'd be welcome. We built a school, we created an endowment, we want to be part of the community. The thing, I suppose, that seduced me about Ethiopia is there is something special in the DNA of the country. The fact that it's the only country in the continent that's never been colonized. There's something in the DNA that's very special. If you combine that with trust and with agreeing the mission, I just think it would be incredibly powerful. I don't think the country has come to realize how powerful this opportunity can be, not for 1 Tulakapi, but for 2, for 3, for 20. I think it's going to happen, and it's not going to take 50 years like it did in Australia. I think it's going to happen much more quickly. So I think it's going to create a lot of benefits, a lot of wealth for everybody. There's no black magic. You know, it's just working and doing things and sticking to your word, and it's the same with any relationship, and not, how to put it, not bending or twisting for the wrong reasons, but just standing your ground, but doing it in a way where it builds trust by performing against agreed mission. I've mentioned that I believe in the geological potential, and I can see the country is on a mission, and we're part of that mission. We can serve that mission. It's a special opportunity to particularly focus on the trust building and benefit sharing with the Oromia government and people. It's even more special, how to put it, than in Australia, as it was for me, and in other countries where we've started up mining operations. It's even more special because, to be blunt, I now have Ethiopian grandchildren. My daughter has married an Ethiopian. We have Ethiopian grandchildren, so you guys are stuck with me, but no matter whether you like it or not. And walk at the site and I see the children and so on. I'm seeing sort of my family. Yeah? The topic of Ethiopia's geological potential is not a new topic. The question has never been whether the potential is there. The question has always been, does Ethiopia really want it to be developed? And can it really happen efficiently? And therefore, I think that simply by performing what we've all now started and delivering what we've all now committed to, will bring in investors, other companies for exploration. It will open up training colleges. It will give all these young geology and engineering graduates an industry to join. I don't think this country was serious about this industry until he came along. Until the boss, whoever that person is, until that person, he or she, says, that's where we're going, everybody else is a bit cautious. So I have to start with the boss. And now he's done the opposite. He said, go. So it starts there. Obviously, a lot of hard-working people in the company, the community welcoming us. All of these people must be thanked. But in all sincerity, and as number one says, go, I think that's most important. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Adis Almai. I'm a non-executive board member of KEFI. You can't hear me? Can you hear me now? You can? Sorry about that. Unfortunately, Harry had to leave early. He just ran out to the airport. He asked me to say a few words. First of all, to thank the organizers for the invitation and the support they've given us. I think the video's given you a glimpse of what we're working on. We're working on the biggest commercial gold mine in Ethiopia at the moment, with financing from the African Finance Corporation as well as the Trade Development Bank. It's a $400 million mine. I don't know if you know, but Ethiopia's biggest export today is gold. And I'm just going to say a few words and then I'll step out. I'm also on the board of Dangote Industries in Ethiopia. Do you know his second largest investment outside Nigeria is Ethiopia? I'm going to leave you with a couple of points. Number one, 130 million people. Number two, opening up its economy for the first time ever. You're not going to find any country on earth after Ethiopia that's opening up its economy for the first time. When I say economy, telecom, banking, logistics, mining, all of that for the first time ever. So I just want to drop that. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
It's okay, I don't need it. I'm a professional broadcaster. Can I please invite this Dr. Louisa Mujela of Wiphold Investment South Africa to the stage. And also Professor Mojisola Adeyeye, Director General of NAFDAC Nigeria. Please, Louisa.
Thank you, Program Director, distinguished guests, honorable ministers and honorable governors. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. It is a privilege and honor to stand among people who care deeply about the future of Africa. I thank the organizers of this African Summit London and the African Business Leadership Awards for creating this platform to challenge us to think honestly about what leadership must now deliver. The theme of this summit, From Vision to Velocity, speaks directly to the moment Africa finds itself in. For many years, we have spoken about Africa rising and its potential. We have spoken about our mineral resources, our arable land, our young population, our creativity, our culture, markets, entrepreneurial spirit. All of this is true. Africa is rich in many aspects, but poor in visionary leadership. This is the contradiction we must confront. How can a continent so richly blessed still have the majority of its people living in abject poverty? Resources, abject poverty. How can the world see value in our resources, our land, our people, our markets, while too many African communities continue to wait for the benefits of that value? The question before us is no longer whether Africa has vision. Africa has a vision, but is that vision a shared one? If vision and velocity are to be real for Africa and Africans everywhere, we must engage, deliver and execute with discipline and courage underpinned by governance and accountability. For me, this is practical meaning of the African Renaissance. The African Renaissance must mean that our resources serve our people. It must mean that public office is treated as service, not entitlement. It must mean that leaders understand they are custodians of our national wealth, not owners of it. When governance fails, the consequences are devastating. They are seen in young people who remain disillusioned and unemployed despite their talent. They are seen in communities where poverty passes from one generation to the next. They are seen in women and children who remain vulnerable because the system meant to protect them is weak. That is why governance is not only a political matter, it is an economic, social, and moral matter. If we want Africa to move with velocity, then accountability, governance, and integrity cannot be optional. Leadership must be measured not only by speeches made, but by the upliftment of societies through education of our youth, job creation, infrastructure development, empowerment of women, and eradication of corruption. In my own journey, I have learned that vision matters, but vision on its own is not enough. Vision must be organized and measured. It must be transformative and impactful. It must be financed. It must be protected by governance. It must have succession planning so that institutions can carry on and maintain the legacy. When we built Wiphold 32 years ago, the vision was not simply to speak about women empowerment. The vision was to create a practical vehicle through which women could participate meaningfully in the mainstream economy. We knew that women had economic muscle, even though it was not properly organized and channeled. Women were already saving, working, selling, building households, supporting families, and carrying communities. What was missing was not ability. What was missing was access, ownership, information, capital, decision-making power, and proper organization. Our vision was therefore to galvanize women's purchasing power and convert it into investment opportunities. This is why women empowerment must go beyond visibility. It is not enough for women to be invited into boardrooms after decisions have been already made. It is not enough for women to be praised once a year. True economic inclusion means access to capital, markets, technology, information, procurement opportunities, ownership, and decision-making power. Inclusion is not charity. Inclusion is economic justice. Africa cannot move from vision to velocity while excluding half of its population from the architecture of growth. The same is true for our youth. Africa's youth is tomorrow's leaders. They are the workers, innovators, entrepreneurs, artists, professionals, and builders of today and tomorrow. But talent without opportunity becomes frustration. Education without employment becomes despair. Ambition without access becomes instability. We must stop asking young people to be patient while resources are mismanaged and plundered. We must give them tools, skills, mentorship, capital, infrastructure, and real opportunities to build. And as we build, we must not lose ourselves. Development does not mean abandoning our African culture. We can build institutions that meet international standards, be innovative and competitive, while still carrying the values of community, respect, humility, and responsibility, and still maintain our African roots. This is what we call Ubuntu. To the young African women, entrepreneurs, and future leaders listening today, I would say this: wealth, institution, reputation, and legacy are not built overnight. They require patience, courage, dogged determination, discipline, learning from mistakes, and humility. Success without humility is dangerous. Wealth without responsibility is empty. Leadership without service is exploitation. And vision without execution remains only an empty dream. Everyone in this room has some form of influence, either capital, political, authority, institutional power, and networks. The question is, what will we do with that influence to widen the roads for others? Ladies and gentlemen, Africa has the vision, Africa has the resources, Africa has the people, Africa has the talent, Africa has the rich history. What Africa now requires is the courage to move with discipline, integrity, and agency. That is how we move from vision to velocity. That is how we renew the African Renaissance. That is how we build a continent worthy of our next generation. Lastly, I come from the tip of Africa, ma'am. 1 minute. Lastly, let us never be too busy to stop and hold the hands of the young ones and help them a step or two up the staircase of self-actualization. In Africa, we believe that those who come after us must transcend us. Thank you, madam.
I'm coming next to you, sister to sister. What you've said is very powerful, and as you can see, you've touched everyone in the audience.
Thank you.
I want to say thank you so much, and you've given us a blueprint for how we need to use resources to motivate the young. Thank you. We have one last goodwill message, and I'm going to ask Professor Mojisola Adeyeye. And I am really sorry to have to, if I have to hover near you to say time is short. My apologies.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's been a long day. I was asked to speak about the African University of the Future: Innovation, Relevance, and Global Competitiveness. Your Excellencies, distinguished leaders, ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to contribute to this conversation on the African University of the Future, because I come to this topic not only as an academic, I was a professor for 30 years in the US, but as a regulator in Nigeria who has lived on the front line and who understands the consequences of what happens when our universities fail to produce graduates who are fit for the industries they are meant to serve. When I assumed the role of Director General of NAFDAC in November 2017, I inherited an agency operating below the first rung, which is maturity level 1 of WHO Global Benchmarking Ladder. We were -1 out of 4. But I also inherited something less visible and perhaps more damaging: a workforce gap. The pharmaceutical and regulatory sciences require deep, applied, digitally literate expertise. What our universities were producing, through no fault of the graduates themselves, were men and women trained for a world that no longer existed. This is the central challenge of the African University of the future. Relevance. Not relevance as a buzzword, but relevance as a survival strategy for Africa. Let me be specific. Biopharmaceutical science is one of Africa's most cross-cutting disciplines in modern pharmaceutical development. I'm a pharmacist by career. It sits at the intersection of science, public health, manufacturing, and trade. Yet, across the continent, pharmacy and pharmaceutical science curricula remain largely theoretical, disconnected from regulatory frameworks, from quality management systems, from the ISO standards and WHO benchmarking tools that determine whether a country can manufacture and trade its own medicine internationally. Most countries in Africa import more than 80% of what they need. That is not the Africa that we want. We train scientists who could navigate a regulatory submission. We train farmers who could not, navigate a regulatory submission, graduates coming from the university. We train pharmacists who had never encountered a standard operating procedure in an academic setting. We produce graduates that lack soft skills such as emotional intelligence, change management, and critical thinking that could be taught as electives in the university or even as seminars. At NAFDAC, we responded by doing what universities should have been doing. We digitized 90% of our regulatory processes. We introduced ISO 9001 quality management systems and trained our own people within the agency. We built partnerships with Gates Foundation, with UNICEF, Global Fund, European Union, and USAID before it was shut down. Not simply for funding, but for knowledge transfer. We created the conditions that led NAFDAC to attain WHO maturity level 3 in 2022, from -1 to 3. When you get maturity level 3, it is not one-off. WHO comes back to re-benchmark the agency. We were re-benchmarked successfully in June 2025, a standard held by only 35% of regulatory agencies worldwide. But here is the question I put to every university leader of this continent: why should a regulatory agency have to do the basic work that universities ought to have initiated? The African University of the future must be built on 3 pillars. First, it must embed digitization. Not just, it's now AI. But it must embed digitization not as a department, but as a discipline. Every faculty from law to medicine to agriculture must produce graduates who are digitally fluent, not merely digitally aware. Second, it must align its curricula with continental and global regulatory and industry standards so that a graduate in pharmaceutical sciences in Lagos or Nairobi or Accra can walk into a WHO benchmarking process and contribute from day one. Third, it must build living partnerships with regulatory bodies, government agencies, and industry so that learning is grounded in the real challenges Africa is trying to solve. Nigeria is now the 24th member of the International Council for Harmonization, one of only 25 members among 194 regulatory agencies worldwide. If we want to be relevant, we have to follow international standards, and it starts from the university. This achievement is not small, but it is an achievement that will only be sustained if our universities begin producing next generation of pharmaceutical and regulatory scientists, pharmacologists, and digitally capable public health professionals with soft skills who can carry this forward. The African University of the Future is not a building. It is a commitment. A commitment to producing graduates who do not just know Africa, but who can position Africa to lead. Thank you very much.
Excellent, excellent. Earlier this evening, we heard about digital leapfrogging, and you've shown us. Thank you. Some very powerful goodwill messages. So a huge round of thanks again to Professor Mojesola Adeyeye, Director General of NAFDAC. Thank you. We are now coming to a very special part of the evening, and I'm going to ask Major Ward to come up, if I may. General Ward, my apologies. Sorry. General Ward to come up. Thank you so much. My apologies. Thank you so much, General Ward.
Not a problem.
Thank you. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask my colleague to come up as well, because all of you are waiting to know who has got the awards. And you won't have to wait much longer, because my colleague is going to read them out. And as he reads them out, I would like to have one of the protocol teams to come up as well to actually get ready to bring the awards as they come up. And we would like you to present them. And thank you so much, General Ward.
It's my pleasure and not a problem.
Okay.
Just open the list for me. Thank you very much, General, for your time and expertise. Okay. We could start off with the is it the first award? You'll call on stage. Okay, can we also call up the Honourable Boima S. Kamara, please? Director General.
So we would request the presence of Honourable Boima S. Kamara, Director General, West African Monetary Agency, Sierra Leone. Are you here? No? Is Dr. Abdul Majid Niskala, Group Managing Director and Chief...
Okay, can we now have Dr. Abdul Majid Nskela, Dr. Akilu Ubet, President and Chief Executive Officer of Wigagan Bank Limited, Ethiopia. Thank you very much, sir.
Dr. Abdul Majid Nishakela, Special African Business Leadership Award. Regional expansion is the engine of Africa's financial integration. As the Group Managing Director of CRDB Bank, Dr. Abdul Majekela has transformed the institution into a regional banking powerhouse, demonstrating that African financial institutions can successfully combine exceptional corporate governance with bold, customer-centric growth. Under his visionary leadership, CRDB Bank...
Right, can we call up the Honourable Henry F. Samai, Executive Governor, Central Bank of Liberia. He's Executive
Samoy, African Central Banking Leadership Award. Monetary stability is the cornerstone of trust in every national economy. As the Executive, Dr. Abdul Majid Nishakela,
Next. Okay. Thank you very much indeed. And could we now call the Honourable Sheku Ahmed Fantamadi Bangura, Minister of Finance, Republic of Sierra Leone. Who's next?
And thank you so much. And I would like to invite Ken Jemmy up, please. Ken Jemmy, would you like to come up? Thank you so much, General Ward.
Thank you so much. Now, I'm sure you'll be surprised that is not the award. Now, what you just witnessed is the listing. These gentlemen are one of the top 40 African finance leaders. It's just a certificate recognized. It's purely an editorial listing which has been published for you, but that's what that is. The proper awards is tomorrow at the House of Lords. I thought to clarify that just very quickly. But before we... That's the general speaking. But we do have a congressional commendation presentation session. Now here, African Leadership Organizations has built partnerships with global leading organizations, with the UK House of Lords, with the Georgia House of Representatives, the National Legislative Black Caucus, and today we have a representative from the South Carolina House of Representatives in the US who submitted a bill to the House of Representatives through, of course, our partnerships, and it passed through the legislative process and is gazetted in the annals of the House of Representatives from South Carolina. So permit me to invite the Right Honorable Rosalind Henderson Myers from the South Carolina House of Representatives. Once this is done, go to the website of the South Carolina House of Representatives, and you'll find this gazetted in, recognizing and commending the contributions of some of the leaders we are recognizing tonight for the work they've done. It's a relationship we built over the years, and we're happy that people like Myers are able to represent us, and people like Baroness Verma, like we'll see tomorrow, continually push the story of African development in rooms that we never used to be before now. So on that note, may I invite Honorable Myers to come to the stage while I call on the next stage of presentations for the congressional commendations. Thank you.
Well, good evening. It's a pleasure for me to be here. I represent House District 31 in South Carolina, and we have in the House of Representatives, we have 124 members. And I can tell you that as a leader, I can recognize the challenges as well as the benefits of being a leader. We in South Carolina have a budget of $39.2 billion yearly, and it's increasing. And there are oftentimes that we make decisions that are for the best of everyone, although not everyone agrees with those decisions. And so I understand the challenges as well as the rewards of those persons who are leaders. So here today, I am here to commend the leaders that have been chosen, and I will read them as follows. We have, okay, I don't know if this is, okay, thanks. We have Aristides Anagos Terras Adams. And for grateful appreciation, he is the executive chairman of Keefe Gold and Copper PLC. And next we have the Honorable Henry F. Samu, and he is the Executive Governor, Central Bank of Liberia.
Please don't be jealous, clap. Congratulations to our distinguished leaders.
Next, we have Dr. Abdulmajid Musa Niskala. He is the Group Managing Director, CEO of CRDB Bank in Tanzania. Next is the Honorable Boma S. Kamara, Director General, West African Monetary Agency, WAMA. Okay. And next we have Mr. Benja Aladi, who is the Managing Director, CEO of Asset Management Corporation of Nigeria. All right, we have Mr. Abdul Karim Diallo, Director General, Sunoco Group. Okay. All right, and we have Dr. Louisa Mariako Majella, Chairman, CEO, Co-founder, Wiphold, South Africa. Next, we have the Honorable Shiku Ahmed Fantamadi Bengura, who is the Minister of Finance, Republic of Sierra Leone. Next we have Al-Haji Abraham Kabiri Musari, Special Advisor to the President of Nigeria. Next, we have H.E. Hope Uzodimma, the Executive Governor of IMO State, Nigeria.
We are ably represented. He is not the governor. Ably represented. Thank you.
All right, next we have H.E. Yes,
go ahead.
Okay, H.E. Malabuni, Executive Governor of Yobe State, Nigeria.
Please can we put our hands together for our distinguished leaders who have been duly recognized by the South Carolina House of Representatives. Thank you so much, Honorable Myers. And like I said, all of these honors are fully gazetted in the history books of the state of South Carolina, commending your contributions to leadership on the continent, and we are very proud to partner with the state. Very soon, they are leading a delegation to Nigeria, hopefully to Tanzania. I've been extended an invitation to Tanzania, and we intend to visit and also engage further. But thank you so much for the great work you're doing, Your Excellencies, distinguished leaders. Thank you. Tomorrow, we have the full awards. Now, it's in twofold. Everybody, you've gotten the appropriate invitations. There's a session in the morning. There's a session for the afternoon. If you are expected to be there, you would have gotten your invitation. If for any reason you don't have it, please speak with members of the team outside, and they will double-check that. It's very time-conscious. In the House of Lords, it's very time-conscious. We're going to start on the dot and leave on the dot. In fact, we don't have a choice. Once it's time, we are going to be asked to leave the room. So please, I really encourage all those who are expected at this meeting tomorrow to be on time. We will start, I guarantee you, on time, and we don't have a choice but to leave on time. All of our distinguished hosts, the Honorable Lord Poppard, the Honorable Baroness Verma, Baroness Notova, have all extended and are looking forward to hosting us tomorrow at the House of Lords. And I want to, on the behalf of my board, the Global Advisory Board, ably represented by our chair, who is now represented by General Ward, and all of our distinguished board members here in the room, I want to say thank you for this beautiful evening. Let the conversations begin. Don't be in a hurry to leave. Let the conversations begin. Go out there, have coffee, have a conversation. Let's take it to the next level. And I guarantee you, we had refreshments this evening, but tomorrow we have proper lunch. So I look forward to welcoming you all at the House of Lords. On that note, thank you on behalf of African leadership. Thank you so much. Thank you, Your Excellencies, for doing us the honors, and we look forward to welcoming you again tomorrow. Thank you again. Over to you, Chris and Larry.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you much, Kenjiami there, who made all this happen. It's all networking out there. You can have a chat, media interviews, photographs, whatever you like. Thank you very much for your time. Is this his or yours? Yeah, okay, finally. Yo. Let me put this back.
Energy projects that light up homes, an agri-food system moving towards sustainable self-sufficiency, transformative investments promoting regional integration. We are committed to improving lives by stimulating growth, building resilience, and optimizing our resources for tomorrow. Together, let's shape a more prosperous and sustainable future for West Africa, where every completed project is synonymous with everyday development. ECOWAS Bank for Investment and Development, transforming ECOWAS communities. Invest today to transform tomorrow. For 5 decades, the ECOWAS Bank for Investment and Development, EBID, has been transforming investment into impact across West Africa. We are shaping a more prosperous future through infrastructure that connects nations, energy projects that light up homes, an agri-food system moving towards sustainable self-sufficiency, transformative investments promoting regional integration. We are committed to improving lives by stimulating growth, building resilience, and optimizing our resources for tomorrow. Together, let's shape a more prosperous and sustainable future for West Africa, where every completed project is synonymous with everyday development. ECOWAS Bank for Investment and Development, transforming ECOWAS communities. Invest today to transform tomorrow. For 5 decades, the ECOWAS Bank for Investment and Development, EBID, has been transforming investment into impact across West Africa. We are shaping a more prosperous future through infrastructure that connects nations, energy projects that light up homes, an agri-food system moving towards sustainable self-sufficiency, transformative investments promoting regional integration. We are committed to improving lives by stimulating growth, building resilience, and optimizing our resources for tomorrow. Together, let's shape a more prosperous and sustainable future for West Africa, where every completed project is synonymous with everyday development. ECOWAS Bank for Investment and Development, transforming ECOWAS communities. Invest today to transform tomorrow. For 5 decades, the ECOWAS Bank for Investment and Development, EBID, has been transforming investment into impact across West Africa. We are shaping a more prosperous future through infrastructure that connects nations, energy projects that light up homes, an agri-food system moving towards sustainable self-sufficiency, transformative investments promoting regional integration. We are committed to improving lives by stimulating growth, building resilience, and optimizing our resources for tomorrow. Together, let's shape a more prosperous and sustainable future for West Africa, where every completed project is synonymous with everyday development. ECOWAS Bank for Investment and Development, transforming ECOWAS communities. Invest today to transform tomorrow. For 5 decades, the ECOWAS Bank for Investment and Development, EBID, has been transforming investment into impact across West Africa. We are shaping a more prosperous future through infrastructure that connects nations, energy projects that light up homes, an agri-food system moving towards sustainable self-sufficiency, transformative investments promoting regional integration. We are committed to improving lives by stimulating growth, building resilience, and optimizing our resources for tomorrow. Together, let's shape a more prosperous and sustainable future for West Africa, where every completed project is synonymous with everyday development. ECOWAS Bank for Investment and Development, transforming ECOWAS communities. Invest today to transform tomorrow. For 5 decades, the ECOWAS Bank for Investment and Development, EBID, has been transforming investment into impact across West Africa. We are shaping a more prosperous future through infrastructure that connects nations, energy projects that light up homes, an agri-food system moving towards sustainable self-sufficiency, transformative investments promoting regional integration. We are committed to improving lives by stimulating growth, building resilience, and optimizing our resources for tomorrow. Together, let's shape a more prosperous and sustainable future for West Africa, where every completed project is synonymous with everyday development. ECOWAS Bank for Investment and Development, transforming ECOWAS communities. Invest today to transform tomorrow. For 5 decades, the ECOWAS Bank for Investment and Development, EBID, has been transforming investment into impact across West Africa. We are shaping a more prosperous future through infrastructure that connects nations, energy projects that light up homes, an agri-food system moving towards sustainable self-sufficiency, transformative investments promoting regional integration. We are committed to improving lives by stimulating growth, building resilience, and optimizing our resources for tomorrow. Together, let's shape a more prosperous and sustainable future for West Africa, where every completed project is synonymous with everyday development. ECOWAS Bank for Investment and Development, transforming ECOWAS communities. Invest today to transform tomorrow. For 5 decades, the ECOWAS Bank for Investment and Development, EBID, has been transforming investment into impact across West Africa. We are shaping a more prosperous future through infrastructure that connects nations, energy projects that light up homes, an agri-food system moving towards sustainable self-sufficiency, transformative investments promoting regional integration. We are committed to improving lives by stimulating growth, building resilience, and optimizing our resources for tomorrow. Together, let's shape a more prosperous and sustainable future for West Africa, where every completed project is synonymous with everyday development. ECOWAS Bank for Investment and Development, transforming ECOWAS communities. Invest today to transform tomorrow. For 5 decades, the ECOWAS Bank for Investment and Development, EBID, has been transforming investment into impact across West Africa. We are shaping a more prosperous future through infrastructure that connects nations, energy projects that light up homes, an agri-food system moving towards sustainable self-sufficiency, transformative investments promoting regional integration. We are committed to improving lives by stimulating growth, building resilience, and optimizing our resources for tomorrow. Together, let's shape a more prosperous and sustainable future for West Africa, where every completed project is synonymous with everyday development. ECOWAS Bank for Investment and Development, transforming ECOWAS communities. Invest today to transform tomorrow. For 5 decades, the ECOWAS Bank for Investment and Development, EBID, has been transforming investment into impact across West Africa. We are shaping a more prosperous future through infrastructure that connects nations, energy projects that light up homes, an agri-food system moving towards sustainable self-sufficiency, transformative investments promoting regional integration. We are committed to improving lives by stimulating growth, building resilience, and optimizing our resources for tomorrow. Together, let's shape a more prosperous and sustainable future for West Africa, where every completed project is synonymous with everyday development. ECOWAS Bank for Investment and Development, transforming ECOWAS communities. Invest today to transform tomorrow. For 5 decades, the ECOWAS Bank for Investment and Development, EBID, has been transforming investment into impact across West Africa. We are shaping a more prosperous future through infrastructure that connects nations, energy projects that light up homes, an agri-food